We already talked about schizophrenic disorders, and we stopped off right there at the end where I reiterated that the DSM-5, the current version, does not recognize these types anymore. But I think it's worth, and I think I'll probably continue to teach these types down the road because historically speaking, they've been with us for many, many decades, and they do speak to the kinds of presentations that you might see with schizophrenia because it's a wide array of people who have schizophrenia, and even when you say it's paranoid type, I've known quite a few paranoid type people with paranoid type schizophrenia, and they're all different. They all have different delusions, they all have different issues, they all present in very different ways, and they're all pretty much interesting and relatively cool people, depending on the situation that they're in. That's a very, very difficult disorder to be beset with. Another very difficult disorder to be beset with is personality disorder, because it is so pervasive and it affects every aspect of somebody's life. Now, these personality disorders we'll see are conditions of chronic, right? It doesn't go away. It's your personality is the issue. Extreme, maladaptive, inflexible character traits which cause distress and which cause impaired functioning. And I would note also in the sense that these things are not realized by the person with the disorder it often will cause pain for other people. This pain is experienced to oneself, but they don't often recognize their own personality is causing the situations that bring that pain, and the pain they experience oftentimes is experienced by other people, because when your personality is the problem, it is a very severe issue. In DSM-4, all the way up to DSM-4, we used to have these things called 5 axes. You had axis 1, which is all the clinical disorders. Like everything you can think of, everything we've been talking about, mood disorders, which are now divided again, anxiety disorders, which have been divided again into traumatic issues and other kinds of things, substance abuse, ADHD, autism, you name it. It was there, except on axis 2, there was mental retardation and personality disorder. Now, those can be subtle issues. You know a little bit about assessment of intelligence and how tricky that is. You can't just take a number and think you know all about a person because of their performance at one time on one test. You have to be very careful to assess for intelligence when it might be a clinical issue. And the other argument was that personality issues can be very subtle too, that people don't always exhibit the problems in a one-on-one interaction of short term and short duration, but that they do come out. So what interested me though was also this. Theoretically, on axis 1, almost all of those disorders are treatable. They're treatable by either talk therapy or medication or a combination thereof. Schizophrenia, it's treatable. Bipolar is treatable. ADHD is treatable. Substance abuse, theoretically, is treatable. But when you got to the axis 2, mental retardation is not treatable. You can detect it early and put in some interventions to help a person maximize what abilities they have in terms of their intellectual gains and knowledge gains. But you can't take somebody with, say, a 60 IQ and raise that IQ to 110 or anything like that. There's no medication to take for it. There's no talk therapy for it. It's just a condition of the person that they have to live with. It's a chronic issue. There's no treatment for personality disorder that works really, really well either. There's no medication to take for your personality. And while we have treatment, it's a very treatment-resistant disorder. Who you are is core to what you are. Think about it for just a second. Now, all of us, as I said, we all got our issues, right? We all got our hang-ups. We all got our eccentricities. We all got our proclivities and all that thing that make us, our individual selves. And we got problems with our personalities that sometimes make it harder for us than it might otherwise be if we could get over those hang-ups, or might cause issues with other people. Everybody has that. That's a shared thing. These are much worse than normal because we already know, statistically speaking, these would be unusual. Usually less than 2% of the population would qualify for any one of these, and some people qualify for multiple of these, right? But then think to yourself, if you had this issue, and somebody in here might, quite frankly, it's not that uncommon. If you got 100 people, you'd expect 2 or 3 on average to meet criteria. Try to be somebody different tomorrow. Don't be you. Be somebody else tomorrow, all day long, in every single situation. Have a wholly different personality tomorrow if you can. And then maintain that for the rest of your life. That's what we're talking about here. You don't just change personalities. You don't just become somebody else. In fact, you wouldn't want to become somebody else. You just want to tame what would otherwise be a problem with the degree of personality traits that you have. It's not that people with personality disorders have personality types unseen in other people. The traits that we talked about in the personality chapter are still applicable. But what we have is most people's personality, you saw that complemented by social psychology chapter. They go well together because all of us have these characteristics that make us us. But the social chapter showed us that there are situations in which we won't necessarily behave characteristically. Novel situations, unusual situations, high pressure situations that we will engage in impression management, or we will just wholly act in ways that aren't really consistent with how other people define us. In other words, most of us are flexible with our personality traits. They're not so dominant that they control every aspect of our lives. But when you have the personality disorder, that's what you're looking at. An extreme exaggeration of otherwise normal personality traits, and I'll give you some examples. Personality disorders are classified into 3 clusters, and we're going to break them down here in a second. The first cluster is cluster A, odd and eccentric, very unusual, but not schizophrenic. All right, schizophrenia, I think you probably picked up on, is a very bizarre and unusual way for people to interact with the world, and other people are usually put off by those interactions because they're so unusual they don't know how to relate to the person, and the person themselves are not relating in a consensus reality basis anyway. So they don't share the perceptions necessarily that other people are having. Cluster B is dramatic and emotional. So everybody can be drama sometimes, right? Everybody's emotional sometimes, but again, here we're looking at some extreme characteristics. And then cluster C is anxious and fearfulness. So we can all be anxious and we can all be fearful, but it doesn't dominate most of our lives because it's not a function of our personality, but usually a function of our response to situations. So you look at these things and you'll see that they're not that far off from what most people experience. And I'm just going to give you the most basic of descriptions for these. You should be able on your test to read a description and go, oh yeah, that's paranoid personality disorder, not bipolar, or borderline personality disorder. You should know them well enough to distinguish them. And they're distinguishable almost by their names alone.